Despite his loss in Georgia and despite his repeated failures in court, President Trump is still not admitting defeat. So, what can we expect in these next 2 months until Inauguration Day? Joining us now, CNN political analyst and journalist and author Carl Bernstein. Carl, great to see you.
Good to be with you.
I guess let's just start there. That was interesting. Hearing Secretary Raffensperger, who has had a bullseye on him since he decided to stick with the facts and stick with the numbers and admit that Joe Biden won. President Trump has had him in his crosshairs, and yet he said, I am a proud Trump supporter, he just said. And, that just leads us to what the Republicans, the silence of the Republicans as all of this happens. What are your thoughts on why they're staying so silent?
First, he just said what every Republican member of the Senate of the United States should have been saying weeks ago. He did and said what a patriot would do and what our senators, the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, by and large, almost all of them have failed to do. Look, let's take a step back here and see what we're talking about. We are witnessing the mad king in the final days of his reign, willing to scorch the earth of his country and bring down the whole system, to undermine our whole democracy, strip it of its legitimacy, and poison the confidence of our people in our institutions and the Constitution for Donald Trump's own petulant, selfish, rabid ends. We have a president of the United States, for the first time in our history, sabotaging his country. That's where we are. And will these Republicans continue to allow it for another day? Because every day it appears more and more that our system cannot handle, was not designed, neither our Constitution or our institutions, to handle an aberrant, mad king like Donald Trump.
Well, I can answer your question. Will they allow it for another day? Yes. Yes. They've allowed it for nearly 3 weeks. I'm not saying they should, but they clearly are. We've got Mitt Romney and Ben Sasse who've come out, and nobody else in the U.S. Senate. And today would be a prime time to do it, with the president trying to have, Michigan legislators come to the White House so he can convince them to overturn the results of the election.
Let me name, say, 15 or so Republican senators. And what I'm doing is not violating a journalistic principle because they've told me what I'm about to say. But for 2 or 3 years, I've talked to members of staffs of the senators, members of committees, staff people, aides, assistants, people who have worked for these people. Let's look at 15 of these Republican senators who really disdain and even despise Donald Trump, have said so to each other. Let's talk about Rob Portman, Lamar Alexander, Ben Sasse, Roy Blunt, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, John Cornyn, John Thune, Mitt Romney, we know, Mike Braun, Todd Young, Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, Chuck Grassley, Richard Burr, and there are others. Many, if not most, of these individuals, from what I have been told, were happy to see Donald Trump defeated in this election as long as the Senate could be controlled by the Republicans. They've experienced Donald Trump and his dishonesty and his pathological lying, and they know what Donald Trump has done to undermine the confidence in our institutions in this country. They've lived through the pandemic while his homicidal negligence is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. They know what's going on. Mr. McConnell knows what's going on. And finally, I'm told in the last 24, 48 hours, I believe he and some others are attempting to find a way to somehow bring the country off the ledge that we are on because of the Mad King and what he is doing, while Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon and others whisper these conspiracies in his ears. But we have a problem. 70, 80% of those people who call themselves Republicans now believe, because of social media, because of Donald Trump and his disinformation and his lying, they believe it's been a rigged election. And we're going to have to live with the legacy of this sabotage by the president.
Carl, it's really interesting to hear you lay out that litany of Republicans who say one thing publicly often and a different thing privately, obviously, to reporters. And so when you say that your sense is from your reporting that they have some sort of plan to walk us off the ledge, well, back from the ledge, I should say, saving us, what would that look like?
Well, first of all, it may be too little too late because the confidence in our institutions that Trump has wanted in his sabotage of the country, bringing us from a cold civil war to pouring the flames onto that cold civil war and igniting it so we're very close to a real cultural civil war and perhaps violence because of his refusal to accept the will of the people in election, because he has attempted and failed at a coup. Imagine a coup attempt by a president of the United States to undermine our electoral system. And he announced before the election he was going to attempt this coup by voter suppression, by illegitimizing the process, saying it was rigged against us. And then when the votes came in against him, he followed up on the attempt at a coup. So it might be a little late to talk us off the ledge in this country by some of these senators. And I'm not at all sure it'll succeed. And what might it look like? It might look like a few, and I don't know this yet because I'm still trying to report exactly what's going on. There has been resistance, as we know, in the intelligence community, in the defense community, to some of what Donald Trump has been trying to do, or perhaps talking to the president that he cannot invade, use troops, attack Iran in some ways. People are fighting back within our institutions, but it's not clear at all that these senators will succeed because can the system actually handle a Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Carl Bernstein, I have to say, if there's anyone who's an expert on the final days, it's you. Literally wrote the book, The Final Days on the Nixon Presidency, and I know you're even more concerned now than you were then. Thank you.
Much more concerned. Nixon left. Republicans convinced him he had to go, and he did.
Thank you, Carl. Great to talk to you as always. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin pulled